The following is a DW Ancient Egypt production. Pepi I was succeeded by his son Merenre in 2283 BC, but little is known of his reign. Merenre shared his father's fascination with Nubia and continued to explore deep into the region. He also began a process of royal consolidation, appointing Winnie as the first governor of all of Upper Egypt and expanding the power of several other governors. The Pyramid of Merenre was badly ruined. The pyramid was entered by an entrance at ground level along its north side. A short passage, a corridor chamber, and another passage with the usual 3 portcullises led down into an antechamber, to the west of which was the burial chamber. The burial chamber contained a black basalt sarcophagus, which was intact when it was discovered. The mummy that was discovered inside this sarcophagus is held by some to have been Merenre I himself, although it most likely belongs to an 18th dynasty intrusive burial. This mummy would be the oldest known complete royal mummy if it is actually him. The niche for the canopic chest was sunk into the floor. As was usual for a 6th dynasty pyramid, Merenre I's pyramid was inscribed with pyramid texts. In the choice and distribution of these texts, Merenre's pyramid is very similar to Pepi I's, even copying the star ceiling. Only little remains of the mortuary temple and other buildings associated with the pyramid of this short-reigning king. The kingship passed on to Merenre's 6-year-old son, Pepi II. Manetho claims that Pepi II came to the throne around 2278 BC at the age of 6 and lived to be 100. This could easily be an exaggeration, but records of his reign point to a rule of at least 65 years, similar in length to Ramses II. His long reign was a possible reason for the Old Kingdom collapse. If he lived to be perhaps 100 years old, he might have been too feeble to properly rule Egypt. Remember that the pharaoh was the physical leader of Egypt. He was in charge of the military, the head of the army. If he did reign for 94 years, he would be the longest ruling monarch in the history of the world. Surprisingly, Pepi II's pyramid was no larger than those of his predecessors, despite the many years in power. An interesting feature is that after the north chapel in the wall was completed, the builders tore down these structures and enlarged the base of the pyramid. A band of brickwork reaching to the height of the perimeter wall was then added to the pyramid. The purpose of this band is not known. The burial chambers had a gabled ceiling covered by painted stars. 2 of the walls consisted of large granite slabs. The sarcophagus was made of black granite and inscribed with the king's name and titles. A canopic chest was sunk into the floor. The pyramid collapsed when the limestone casing was removed sometime in antiquity. The causeway was approximately 400 meters long and led to the valley temple that was on the shores of a lake, which is now long gone. The alabaster statuette of young Pepi II is his most famous portrait. It is unique in that it shows him at a much smaller scale than his mother. The difference in size is atypical because the king is usually shown larger than others. His mother, Oncasin Pepi II, most likely ruled as a regent in the early years of his reign. On the walls of a tomb in Abydos is the story of Winnie, one of the longest narrative inscriptions of this period. His autobiography records how he rose from almost obscure origins through the court hierarchy under the first 3 kings of the dynasty to become the governor of the south. During Merenre's reign, Winnie became sole arbiter in a harem conspiracy case involving Queen Weret Imtez. Never before had the like of me heard a secret matter of the king's harem, but his majesty caused me to hear it. Bearing in mind Manetho's assertion that the previous king Teti had been assassinated, no doubt the sentence on the queen was a capital one. Another detailed autobiography of this time was discovered in the tomb of the noble and caravan leader Harkuf. The inscription details how Harkuf made 4 journeys into the dangerous lands south of Aswan to collect elephant tusks, ebony, incense, and other commodities. During the second year of Pepi II's reign, he captured a small pygmy while on the route to Darfur. He sent word ahead to the young pharaoh, who wrote back with specific instructions that the pygmy should be inspected 10 times a night as he slept to ensure no harm befell him. This expedition was evidently successful. The Egyptian state's ability to control zones east from the Nile seems to have waned, and mining expeditions to Sinai ended after Pepi II's reign. Military activity in Asia is last reported in the biography of Winnie the Elder from the early 6th dynasty, and the trade contacts with ports farther north seem to have ceased. While the names of many kings of the 4th dynasty to King Pepi II appear in Byblos, no later ones occur until the 12th dynasty. Yet Egypt's control over the western desert was strong in the late Old Kingdom and continued into the First Intermediate period. Egypt's military adventures, internally and abroad, required troops. Originally, the army had been made up of local men who fought as part of their duties to the state and, later on, to their local lords. Starting in the 6th dynasty, armies, such as Winnie's expeditionary force, included mercenaries from Nubia and Libya, and these foreigners would become a permanent fixture even when the Egyptian state reunified under the Middle Kingdom. The Nubian soldiers seemed to have fully accepted Egyptian mortuary customs, but wanted to preserve their separate identity. They used an Egyptian type of monument and adopted Egyptian styles in their representations, as well as Egyptian names, but they depicted themselves with a darker skin color and Nubian hairdo, and sometimes explicitly stated they were Nubian in the inscription. The historical record became silent toward the end of Pepi II's reign. The central government eventually broke down, and the country fell into political disorder upon the death of Pepi II. As a result, Egypt fell into chaos, and the historical record disappeared. This dark age, called the First Intermediate Period, would be one of 3 similar breakdowns that Egypt would face during its 3,000 years. Egyptologist Bob Breyer points out that change for Egypt was always bad. Changes made at the end of the Old Kingdom, which included solar temples, name changes to the solar god Ra, and pyramid texts in the burial chambers, signaled a decline in royal authority and a rise in status for the priests, who may have begun controlling the country.